You're welcome to the Gavel. I'm Linda Akibi. The clock is ticking towards the deadline for President Bola Tinubu to present his list of ministers to the Senate for screening and confirmation. Now, President Tinubu has a 60-day deadline to do so as prescribed in the amended 1999 Constitution, and the countdown started on May 29th. Now, while the Senate awaits the lists, federal lawmakers in the Senate and House of Representatives debated a variety of issues in both chambers and offered some legislative interventions.
The Senate has set up an ad hoc committee to investigate the abuse of firearms by officials of the Nigerian Customs Service in Katsina State and at border communities in the country. This is after a federal lawmaker on Wednesday, July 19th, brought to the attention of his colleagues the alleged killings and attacks on residents of Katsina State by officers of the Nigerian Customs Service at different times.
Worried that some officers of the Nigerian Customs Service, who should be civil and professional in their engagements and handling of firearms, have had a series of shootings of innocent citizens. The former governor of Katsina State, Right Honorable Aminu Bello Masari, threatened to sue the Nigerian Customs Service over the killing of residents during one of their border drills in the state.
Lawmakers passionately expressed their feelings on the matter.
I want to agree that there is urgent need for us to review the activities of the Nigerian Customs in our borders across this country. This indiscriminate killing is just getting too much.
Customs is a civil organization to collect and to prevent, revenue and to prevent smuggling. At times you prevent smuggling by persuasion, not by wielding guns.
At the end of the debate, the Senate urged the leadership of the Nigerian Customs Service to fish out the erring officers and probe the incidents that led customs officials to allegedly open fire on unarmed civilians. Meanwhile, a federal legislator, Senator Abamoro, wants the Senate to intervene in what he deems are unfair employment practices, where some employers place age requirements as a precondition for employment. But the senator does not share his views.
Notes further that the circumstances described in the foregoing presents a predicament of the Nigerian youth who has the prerequisite qualifications, knowledge, skills, and is ready to work, but disqualified or excluded from on the sole and unjustifiable ground that he or she is above the age limit by reason of his or her birth, and this sad situation has led many to commit age fraud.
There is no law prohibiting employment of people who are 30 or 40 or 50. But employers, depending on the kind of job they have, the skills required for that job, the strength and all the other things that the average employer look at in making a decision, I do not think, with profound respect to my distinguished Senate brothers and sisters, that we should interfere on that.
After the debate, the Senate urged the Federal Ministry of Labor and Employment to immediately draw up policies that relate to equality of opportunity and treatment in access to employment at all levels. There were also some other legislative interventions by the Senate during the week. One of them was in the electricity sector, where the Senate asked the federal government to urgently suspend the Transmission Company of Nigeria's tender for the World Bank-funded National Mass Metering Program Phase 2. The Senate says the action has become necessary to undertake a comprehensive review of the procurement criteria, which must prioritize local manufacturing and assembling of prepaid meters to boost employment generation and economic growth for Nigeria.
The Senate also notes that the members of the Association of Meter Manufacturers of Nigeria, AMON, are capable of producing world-standard smart meters. Hence, the Transmission Company of Nigeria, TCN, and the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, NEC, under Phase 1 of the mass metering program of the federal government, issued the association, after a competitive bidding process, a letter of no objection to award 4 million meters in 2022.
An examination of the activities of the House of Representatives showed that the lower chamber waded into several national issues. A motion of urgent importance from Honorable Tunji Olawi drew the attention of the House to the case of contaminated aviation fuel involving Max Air. The House is concerned about the danger this may portend to the safety of Nigerians.
That the House to constitute an ad hoc committee, which is very important because this thing happens all the time and is endangering the life of Nigerians, to investigate the increasing incidences of aviation fuel contamination, associated air travel risks, and possible non-adherence to standard operating procedures and industry best practices in the aviation industry, and report to the House in the next 8 weeks.
The House also considered and passed through second reading a bill for an act to amend the Electricity Act 2023 to address concerns of host communities.
Exchange rate has shot up from 300 official rate of 300 naira to the dollar. It is now close to 800 and something naira. They buy, infrastructure cost has gone up, diesel cost has gone up on their side as well. How do we make them comfortable so that they can sustain the present rate regime? That is what we are requesting for, sir. That we find a way of bringing the NEC on board and the disco instead of having a fiat and saying don't increase permanently.
Similarly, the House asked the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission not to approve the increase in electricity tariff as requested by the distribution companies.
In a house of 5 bedrooms today in Abuja, you don't pay anything less than 100,000 for electricity every month. And about 6 months back, without telling anybody, this same agency went and increased the price.
Not every lawmaker agreed to this, but the motion was passed.
Honorable Madaki have even proffered a solution from this debate, and especially number 2, that when the committee is being constituted, they should be able to find a common ground for what is on the issue of the hike. So either for, we know that there are business people in this, but the interest of Nigerians is very, very key.
Concerned about the mental health of residents of Borno State who have been largely affected by insecurity, the House has called for the establishment of vocational training and sports centers.
The House resolved to urge the Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, National Directorate of Employment, and other relevant agencies to establish vocational training and sports centers in Askira-Uba and Howell government area of Borno State.
In the meantime, the House of Representatives has asked the federal government and the NCDC to swiftly intervene to curtail the spread of anthrax disease, which was discovered in a farm in Niger State. A federal lawmaker, Honorable Adamu Tanko, raised it as a matter of urgent national importance.
Worried that anthrax may affect humans in direct contact with affected animals and contaminated products with potential inhalation through spores or wounds, resolves to urge the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development to collaborate with relevant stakeholders in implementing effective surveillance, vaccination, and awareness campaigns to contain the outbreak and provide adequate resources and support to affected communities.
Ms. Mmesoma Ejikeme, the embattled 19-year-old girl from Anambra State in the JAMB result forgery case, says she has written to the exam body pleading for leniency. She stated this when she appeared before an ad hoc committee of the House of Representatives, which is investigating the matter, and also presented her letter of apology to the committee.
I apologize for all the apportioned blame and all the pains I've caused. I want to emphasize that ignorance played a significant role in my misguided action. I lacked a clear understanding of the far-reaching consequences and the impact my actions would have. Words cannot adequately describe the depths of pain I feel for letting you down. This is the first time in my life and academic studies that I will be accused for any form of misbehavior. Therefore, I plead for leniency and total forgiveness for my misconduct.
During plenary, federal lawmakers drew the attention of the House to the killing of a young boy by a stray bullet belonging to officials of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency in Asaba Delta State. While one lawmaker urges the IGP to take over the matter, another, through a petition from the father of the child, calls for justice.
A petition on the gruesome killing of my son, 2-year-old Evad Omori, and serious injuries on my second son, 1-year-old Mmesoma Umuri by men of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency (NDLEA) in Asaba State, in Asaba, Delta State.
The House resolved to observe a minute silence for Ivan Onose Omorian and other victims who tragically lost their lives. 2. Urge the Inspector General of Police, IGP, to take over the investigation, prosecution of the officers in the shooting and killing of Ivan Onose Omorian and ensure that the perpetrators are brought to book.
A minute of silence is observed in his honor.
May the gentle soul of the departed rest in perfect peace.
The House considered a series of motions, one of which is on the need to make provision for free high blood pressure and sugar level check at desks in the airports. The House believes that the provision of these check desks will demonstrate the country's commitment to public health promotion.
Aware that air travel has become increasingly accessible to a larger portion of the population. However, the stress associated with travels, coupled with sedentary nature of long flights, can significantly impact the health of individuals, particularly those with pre-existing conditions such as high blood pressure and sugar and diabetes.
Meanwhile, in line with the federal government's diversification agenda and the needs to improve revenue generation, the House has asked the federal government to leverage on the huge economic potentials in the maritime sector by revitalizing the seaport in Edo State.
Urge the federal government to, in line with its diversification agenda, leverage the huge economic potentials in the maritime sector by including the revitalization of Gelegele Seaport in Edo State in the 2024 budget estimates.
In the meantime, the House is to investigate the non-remittance of due taxes by the NNPCL into the Federation account.
I stand here to adopt all the paragraphs of this motion and accordingly pray the House to resolve to set up an ad hoc committee to investigate the non-remittance of revenues to the federal government account by the Nigerian Petroleum Company Limited and the accusation by the Federation Accounts and Allocation Committee.
And the burning of a vessel containing stolen crude oil in Delta State on the 11th of July got the attention of the House as lawmakers expressed worry over the devastating effect on host communities. During another plenary session, a lawmaker asked the House to investigate the increase in fuel pump price from 537 naira to 617 naira.
The resultant effect is an overnight increase in the cost of transportation across the country, and of course, we're expecting a hike in price of food in the coming days because the price of fuel affects the price of everything in the market.
An amendment to the motion calling for the suspension of the increment is, however, rejected by the House.
Selection of the type of palliative that the executives feel will help them achieve their national objective remains the responsibility of the executive. I don't think it is the responsibility of the legislature. Those in support that ad hoc committee be set up to select the type of palliative that Nigerians want, say aye. And those against it say nay. The nays have it.
The House also rejected a motion to set up an ad hoc committee to collate the views of lawmakers, civil society organizations, as well as the public, and engage the government on the selection of the best palliative options to cushion the effect of the removal of fuel subsidy in Nigeria. Also, the House, like the Senate, is calling for the suspension of the concessioning of the Abuja and Kano airports as it resolved to carry out an investigation of the entire process leading to the concessioning.
The most viable airports in our country were concession to foreign firms through Federal Executive Council resolutions that deviated from the process, public accountability, and established laws of the land.
The upper chamber also confirmed the appointment of the service chiefs after considering the reports of its ad hoc committee which carried out the screening exercise. Those confirmed are Major General Christopher Musa, Chief of Defense Staff; Major General Taurid Lagbaja, Chief of Army Staff; Rear Admiral Emmanuel Ogala, Chief of Naval Staff, and Air Vice Marshal Hassan Abubakar, Chief of Air Staff.
You're welcome back to the Gavel. The 9th Assembly, which expired on June 11, 2023, passed more than 500 legislations to promote and sustain democracy, democratic institutions, good governance and accountability. However, there were some key legislations not passed by the 9th Assembly, which keen observers say the legislature are asking the 10th Assembly to revisit. Lawmaking, representation and oversight. The three broad and essential functions of a legislature in a democracy. These are also the responsibilities Nigerians look forward to from the new 10th Assembly, which was inaugurated on June 13, 2023. The previous 9th Assembly passed some landmark legislations, namely the Federal Audit Bill, Data Protection Bill, Petroleum Industry Bill, Electoral Bill, Deep Offshore and Inland Basin Production Sharing Contract, as well as a Money Laundering Prevention and Prohibition Bill, Terrorism and Prevention and Prohibition Bill, and the Proceeds of Crime Recovery and Management Bill.
Those against any answer, you may let the report, Chairman.
But the 9th Assembly fails to pass the Electoral Offences Bill, which keen observers of Parliament say is important to ensure transparent elections. The 9th Assembly also failed to pass the Fiscal Responsibility Act Amendment Bill, intended to compel defaulting MDAs to remit revenue due to government to the Federation account.
The Electoral Offences Commission, the bill was pending in the last Assembly. It should be one of the first bills we expect the 10th National Assembly to revisit itself. Like, this is important because we are talking about curbing impunity.
And as activists in the civil society space hope that the 10th Assembly will revisit the Electoral Offences Commission Bill, they also want Parliament to reconsider the 5 gender bills which failed spectacularly in the 9th Assembly.
Reserved seat bill, citizenship, indigenship bill, affirmative action bill, and the one for Ministerial Commissioner were not passed in the 9th Assembly. And I'm hoping that in the 10th Assembly, they will prioritize these bills, in terms of advancing women's right to equality. Now, why is the reserved seat bill important? It is important because historically, since 1999, we've seen a dwindling representation of women in politics, especially in our political leadership. While we seem to have increased women participation, we have fewer women representation.
Beyond the gender bills which failed during the Constitution review done in the 9th Assembly, some lawmakers in the 10th Assembly are desirous of seeing the passage of the Constitution review bills, which former President Muhammadu Buhari did not assent to.
For me, areas like this independent candidacy, areas like indigenship, whether you are married to a man, whether you are qualified to claim the indigenship of where your husband is from, and then whether you have spent 10 years in the place and you are qualified to be voted for, and since you are qualified to vote.
The 10th Assembly is coming on board at a time when Nigeria is grappling with high cost of food and transportation worsened by the removal of petrol subsidy, as well as high inflation and unemployment rates and pervasive insecurity, all of which demand urgent legislative interventions from Parliament. On Constituency Focus this week, we speak with Senator Gbenga Daniel, who was a former governor of Ogun State, to speak on his plans for his constituency in the next 4 years.
As you are probably aware, I've always been a grassroots person, and there was not a time that I left my constituency. We do have constituency offices that are functional. Ogun East consists of the people of Remo and people of Ijebu largely, and we have already constituency in both locations that are running and fully functional. But apart from that, in the course of our tour, we went around virtually everywhere, every village, and we do have a comprehensive report of the needs of our people, largely. And what we just try to do is to see how we can synchronize that with what the government and the local governments want to do. And once those ones are sorted out, whatever is now left, we will try to use the constituency project to supplement all of this. That's really what we want to do. But you can imagine how it is. Practically everything needs to be done up. There are schools that we don't want to refurbish. There are healthcare institutions that we want to refurbish. On Sunday and Monday this week, for instance, we are launching a microcredit, which basically is to provide an interest-free loan for people to start up their businesses. So that's going to happen on Sunday and on Monday. And under that first scheme, we are touching about 400 traders, basically to support their micro businesses, and we're doing that from our own little resources. That's going on. On top of that, we're having computer training for also young people who have not been able to lay their hands on anything. Educated people, jobless, and so we hope that after the training, we can also help them for little startups. So those are some of the things that we are doing. But if you know our antecedents, this is nothing new to us. We've always done this forever. In the build up to the election, we've had to secure probably about 200 indigent students that are on our scholarship, which is running, and so on and so forth. But apart from that, there are some other relatively major projects that we're working on very seriously. As you're aware, the new airport in Ogun State is now being completed. And in the course of our campaign in Akaka, for instance, we ran into a more or less abandoned federal tanker center. And part of what we want to do here is to put a bill forward so that can be recreated into an aviation school that can also complement, what the government is doing with the airport that is being built. Of course, there are other bigger things that we're working on. Big. For instance, that while I was governor, we tried our hands on what we call Lagos Ogun mega project. It's a mega city project, and there was also potential for World Bank and international funding to actually recreate the Lagos Ogun as indeed a mega city. That also requires the support of the National Assembly, and we're going to work very hard on that if we can recreate that. Now we have Niger Delta Development Commission. We now have North State Development Commission. There are peculiar problems in those areas. Okay, but in our own houses, it has been over congestion, and if we are not careful, those cities will become really, really difficult to live in. A large number of people who work in Lagos live in Ogun State, and so Ogun State has become a cluster of potential great population. In those days, Lagos used to be the federal capital. It's no longer the federal capital, but federal government have also a duty to cooperate, just like they've done with the Niger Delta, because the peculiarity of their problems, what they're doing with Northeast, because we also have the peculiarity of population explosion. And that's one major thing that I want to spearhead with my other colleagues in Lagos and neighboring states. All of these things are work in progress. I also did not say to you that we also have a great medical program, largely for women and the aged. This is something that we've been doing anyway. We've got ambulances. We go from market to market, from village to village, cooperate with a number of pharmaceutical companies. We have some volunteer doctors who are on this scheme. It's also a program that is very, very successful, and we intend to also intensify this largely for the aged, for everybody, but concentration on women and the aged. That's also going on. Having said that, if you look at the demographics, you know also that the younger people constitute probably about 70% of the population of the country. So whatever we do without the youth, we are wasting time. We are not preparing for what can come in the future.
This is where we call it a day on this week's edition of The Gavel. If you have any views on any of the issues discussed, please email us on thegavel@channelstv.com. Thank you for staying with us and see you again next week.